Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this video, we got ourselves another Sales with Grails segment here on the channel, where I take a look at the 5 most interesting sales that happen on the comic book consignment page, Grails Comics. So in this video, we're going to go through the sales and talk about what is happening on the streets. But before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do those things, I'd appreciate it. But let us get right into the sales with Grails. And the first book we got to talk about is this beautiful one right here, Chamber of Chills number 19 from 1953, the classic Lee Elias cover. Now, if you guys know your PCH books, you would know that this one is definitely a top 5 PCH Grail out there, possibly even a top 3, maybe even the top PCH Grail. Let me know in the comments if you actually think that that is the case. But we had an $11,500 sale for a CGC 4.5 that sold in 2 hours. Just took 2 hours from having posted this book on the consignment page for them to find a sale. That is definitely really impressive. And I think that that is definitely the story that we have to talk about for this particular key. I mean, Chamber of Chills 19 has been one of those books that has been, absolutely on fire in these last couple years. I mean, I know that this has always been a great key out there, a great PCH book, but it feels like, with each progressive sale, we get higher and higher record numbers, and it feels like the mystique that surrounds this book just continues to grow. I mean, there's a reason why this is one of the most homaged PCH books. I mean, not only is it just cool from a horror sort of standpoint, I mean, it is really cool art. It is really classy. And I think that that's why there's a lot of people that like to, pay homage to this thing. Obviously, it got a lot more notoriety too, because it was on the cover of the Misfits album, which maybe kind of propelled it into the pop cultural limelight. But regardless, this is still one of the top books out there. 121 universal grades. On the swag scale, this one gets a 23, which puts it in the purple chip category. Yes, that is right. I recently updated my categories for my ratings, so if you guys want to check it out, I'll put a link in the description. Purple chip, obviously a step above the blue chips. Now, the one other little thing to talk about with this book is that the last GPA sale for this thing was 11,100, which makes the 11,500 the highest sale in grade, even though that is sort of off the charts, so to speak. But it is really interesting because when you have a book like this, there are going to be so many people who want it that you can kind of stick to your price. But the fact that they were willing to take an offer so fast after posting it kind of goes to show like the Wild West nature of a lot of comic book selling. If people got cash, if people are ready to go, you got the money right then and there, deals are being made. That's kind of what's happening all over the country at these cons, in LCSs, and certainly on the Grails Comics page. All right, let's talk about the second interesting sale that happened on the Grails Comics page, and it was actually 2 copies of this classic book right here. You guys know this one, X-Men #1 from 1963, the first appearance of the X-Men. Of course, we're talking Professor X, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, Angel, and Magneto. Now, like I said, there were 2 sales in this last month on this page. We had an $11,500 sale in a CGC 4.5 and a $4,500 sale in a CGC 1.0. And I think one of the interesting things about this book is that, this is definitely one of those ones that, for Silver Age mega keys, this has, typically speaking, a higher census than a lot of other books. I mean, I think that has to do with the fact that, this was a #1 issue. And even back in the day, I think #1 issues sold more frequently than that of, say, Tales of Suspense 39s. I think that there are just more people who are willing to give this book a try, and that's one of the reasons why there are more books on the census. And for that reason, we've actually been seeing this book have pretty hefty corrections across most of the grades. Although now that when we look at the charts and we see that these books are pulling back, having their corrections, they're basically just falling right in line to the trend line of what we sort of been discussing in all of our index videos. And I think what's maybe most interesting about that is specifically the CGC 1.0 sale, sticking to that $4,500 floor. Now, the 1.0, like other grades, is a grade that definitely got out of hand during the comic book boom, going all the way up to $7,000. But what we're seeing, at least for the time being, is that the support floor for getting into these books are really holding strong overall. There's a lot of collectors out there that just want copies. And that is the reason why a lot of the floors are still going to be pretty competitive overall. But when you get to that 4.5 range at 5 figures, now you have a lot of different options of where you want to put your money. And it's going to be harder for books like this to kind of maintain, all of those floors in sort of that mid-grade level. Now, like I mentioned in my swag scale video, this one rates about a 21, which puts it in the blue chip category. So no matter what grade you buy, I think you're going to do pretty well well overall. All right, let's go over now to the third interesting sale that happened on the page, and we got to talk about this one, X-Men #2 from 1963, another X-Men book, obviously the next one in the series that would feature the second appearance of the X-Men team and the first appearance of the character known as the Vanisher. Now, this particular sale was very interesting because we had a $13,500 sale for a CGC 9.2, but no ordinary CGC 9.2. This was a Winnipeg pedigree copy. And I think that that's one of the things that is most interesting to talk about when talking about this sale, because I think that the fact that this book was a pedigree copy was why it was able to command such a strong price overall. This is the second highest price this book has ever gotten in that grade. The highest price was $14,400, and that was some months back in 2022. So the fact that this book is only corrected by $1,000 in this economy is a really strong showing, and I think that has everything to do with the pedigree copy. I do later on want to do more videos talking about pedigree copies because I do think that they're interesting, and typically speaking, they do command a little bit more of a premium than regular copies. I mean, not every pedigree copy is going to have that premium, but even the less notable ones still seem to pull around about 5% more, generally speaking. And I think doing a video series on it will be worthwhile. But of course, this is still a great Silver Age book. X-Men are always going to be popular. They're always going to be in demand. And one of the things that I do like about this book is that it is actually the first cover of Professor X. I like second appearances when they can offer something different than what you get out of the first appearance. So sometimes you have the first cover of a character, or maybe you have the first, character's name in a particular book. I like it when the second appearances offer that extra little factor, and I think you get that here with Professor X. Now, that being said, this book only rates a 15 on the swag scale because it only is that second appearance, and the Vanisher is not necessarily a top tier character. So if we're talking about this book as far as pure investment grade, on the swag scale, we're still looking at it in more of the speculative to some risk category. All right, let's go on now to the fourth interesting sale that happened on the Grails Instagram page. And by sale, I mean sales, because we got to talk about Joker covers. Now, the first book we have to talk about here is Detective Comics number 114 from 1946. That is the classic Joker cover that actually has him juggling his name. Now, for that particular book, we had a $1,450 sale in a CGC 3.0. On top of that, we had some more Joker covers. Batman number 37 selling for $800 in a 1.5, and Batman number 66 selling for $1,000 in a CGC 5.0. And I think the story coming out of this one is, while Golden Age Joker covers are always going to be in demand, Joker, one of the top villains in all of comic books, you still have to really focus on the Joker covers that have the best aesthetics. Now, I know that aesthetics is subjective overall. What looks cool to some person might not look cool to another, but it is kind of showing that the Detective Comics 114 of this batch is the one that was able to yield its record price in grade, while the other Batman books have had slight pullbacks since their highs of 2022. And what I mean to suggest by all that is, while the Batman covers are still very cool, they do lean a little bit more in the kind of campy, more kiddish style of aesthetics versus the Detective Comics cover, which has a more kind of, menacing kind of Joker feel. And that's why I was still able to command a record sale in grade. But the pullbacks for the Batman books weren't that much overall. We're talking very slight pullbacks from their highs. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people like to invest in those Golden Age books, because when you have censuses less than 300, there's just not many people that are going to be able to undercut you. And that's why your value is always going to be protected when you make those purchases. But of course, Golden Age Joker books always going to be in demand, always being sought after. A lot of people like to collect these things, and I think that the Detective Comics number 114 is definitely one of the best affordable Joker covers that you can get for yourself. All right, let's go on now to the last interesting sale we got to talk about on the Grails Instagram page, and it's got to be for this big boy book right here, Brave and the Bold number 28 from 1960. And what is the significance of this? Well, of course, this would be the first appearance of the Justice League. It would also, of course, be the first appearance of Starro, who made his debut in the Suicide Squad movie, and we had a $3,950 sale for a CGC 4.5. Now, while that sale is nowhere near this book's record price, it definitely is a strong sale and shows that this book has slowly been heating up once again. I think that's one of the interesting stories and takeaways from this particular sale, is that we're definitely feeling the James Gunn effect. A lot of comic book collectors are looking towards those DC keys once again. A lot of movement for the DC keys, and people seem to be really hype and optimistic of what could be coming with DC. But one of the things I think is interesting about this particular book is that, DC books are not unlike Marvel books. The movies can have their effect just like we see with Marvel Silver Age. And this particular book is one of those ones that has had big corrections, big drop-offs after we got the movie. I mean, back in 2017, this was a book that had record sales at the $5,000 range. I mean, that's a pretty hefty pullback, especially considering, what we just saw with the comic book boom. Now, DC Keys also got elevated during the comic book booms of 2021 and 2022. This is a book that was seeing its lows in 2020 and did get a spike up even before we got the James Gunn announcement. So I do think it is interesting to see, what's going on with the DC books. They have followed similar trajectories to that of Marvel. It's really only the DC Golden Age books that I think are more safe to those adjustments and corrections, which is why this book actually rates a 17 on the swag scale, which puts it in the low risk category. I mean, it's still a great book, still one that I personally would love to have in my collection, but if you look at the charts for this thing, if you look at the graphs, there has been a lot of volatility over the course of the years. Of course, the swag scale is designed to sort of mitigate downside risk, which is why it ranks a little bit lower than that of some of the other books that we've talked about. I mean, I had the no grade for the Joker books, but actually, if I was going to, put them on the swag scale, the Detective comic books one would probably rate around 18, maybe even 19 if you were more bullish on it, because of the fact that, everything has to do with those censuses. Everything has to do with if you can get undercut for your book's value. But again, that doesn't mean that a book can't go to the moon. And maybe Brave and the Bold 28 is going to go to the moon in the next couple years under the stewardship of James Gunn. Anyways, that's all for this video. Those were the 5 interesting sales on the Grails Instagram consignment page. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have any of these books? What do you think about some of these numbers? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next one.